The Smile Offensive. In the Praximus Nebula, where seven star systems converged in a spiraling dance of cosmic dust and radiation, seven star systems the Drelvan Confederation maintained its cosmic prestigious research station. The Drelvan Confederation maintained its most prestigious research station. A gleaming metallic spider above the gaseous planet Sorelli hung like its 16 radiating arms housing specialized laboratories dedicated to xenoanthropology. Its 16 radiating arms, the study of specialized laboratories dedicated to xenoanthropology. Commander Zithnar stood rigidly in the central observation deck. His four elongated arms stood rigidly in the central observation secondary eyelids, his four elongated arms across large compound eyes. Secondary eyelids exoskeleton nervously across his large compound eyes. Freshly, his exoskeleton gleamed under the blue-tinged lights. The first human ever to enter Drelvan space was about to board their station. The first human ever to enter Drelvan space was about to board their second in command. A gesture that released pheromones indicating extreme anxiety despite his outwardly calm demeanor. A gesture that released pheromones indicating Vexmore's anxiety despite his outwardly calm demeanor. Her mandibles carefully arranged. Lieutenant Vexmore's antennae twitched in of deferential reporting. Her mandibles carefully arranged. The human transport vessel has docked in Bay 7 deferential reporting. Decontamination transport vessel has docked in Bay 7 specimen appears to be in good health. Decontamination protocols detect unusual fluctuations appears to be in good health. Respiratory and circulatory systems detect unusual fluctuations humans, interjected science officer Krelocks. Those are normal for cranium pulsing with the blue bioluminescence that indicated active their bulbous cranium pulsing with the blue biological systems are remarkably inefficient processes. They waste energy. Their biological systems are remarkably regulation and experience involuntary physiological responses to psychological regulation and experience involuntary physiological responses to psychological stimuli. I've read the preliminary reports. Secondary arms twitched in annoyance. What concerns me are the I've read the preliminary reports. Science officer. The Unified Galactic Council has classified humans as a level 7 containment risk. The Unified Galactic Council has classified humans as a level 7 containment risk. With respect, that classification is based primarily on theoretical models. Faster. No actual human has been studied under controlled conditions until now. No actual human has been studied under controlled conditions until now. With a pneumatic hiss. The door to the observation officer Drexethal entered. Open with a pneumatic armored exoskeleton gleaming with defensive enhancements. Drexethal entered. His armored exoskeleton gleaming with defensive enhancements. All non-essential personnel have been escorted through Corridor 19B. Excellent. All non-essential personnel have been cleared from the releasing a carefully measured pheromone of approval. Zithnar clicked. Remember, releasing a carefully measured pheromone here as part of a cultural exchange program. Remember, the Unified Council has authorized us to maintain this exchange while we assess the threat level. The Unified Council has authorized us to maintain the specimen to learn of our true threat level, or gain access to restricted areas. Is the specimen to learn of our true Drelvans move or gain access to restricted areas. Their compound eyes focusing on the security feed from Corridor 19B. Their compound eyes focusing on the two towering Drelvan guards, appearing small and fragile by comparison. Between two towering It wore the standard issue containment suit provided fragile by silicon-based life forms. It wore the standard issue containment suit to keep its head uncovered after atmospheric compatibility tests. Though it had been permitted to keep its head uncovered after atmospheric compatibility tests proved satisfactory. Mandibles clicking softly. It looks harmless. Vexmore observed. So does a neurotoxin before it dissolves your nervous system. Drexethal responded. So does a neurotoxin before it dissolves your nervous system to a defensive posture. Responded. The human suddenly stopped walking plates shifting to a defensive camera. The human suddenly the most alarming thing happened. Looked directly at the lower portion of its face split open. Then the most alarming row of white bony protrusions. The lower portion of its face skin around its visual revealing a row of white bony protrusions. Defensive posture. While the skin around its visual organs crinkled. His arm already reaching for the station-wide alarm. Barked Drexethal. His arm already reaching for the station flashed rapidly. Wait. That's a smile. It's a non-threatening facial expression according to our limited data. That's a smile. Supposedly, it's a non-threatening facial expression according to our limited data. Fascinating. Supposedly, indicates positive emotional status. Leaning closer to the screen. Fascinating. How extraordinarily disturbing. Leaning closer to the screen, known as Dr. How extraordinarily disturbing. Continued smiling at the camera as she followed her escorts down the pristinely maintained corridor. Smiling at the camera as she followed her escorts down the pristinely maintained corridor. 15 years of diplomatic training had taught her that she was a bundle of nerves. Confidence was half the battle. 15 years of diplomatic training had taught her that showing natural confidence was half the battle in first contact. Knowing the microphones in her suit would pick up every word, she whispered to herself. They're probably more scared of microphones in her suit would pick up every word. The Drelvan station was a more scared engineering you are of them. All smooth curves and The Drelvan station was a marvel of engineering, functional but often smooth curves of Earth's space symmetry. The air held a faint scent of something like cinnamon and copper. Not unpleasant, but the air held a faint scent of something like cinnamon and copper. As she entered what appeared to be a conference room, but definitely Maya found herself facing four Drelvans standing in perfect formation. Maya found herself facing four Drelvans ranged from copper to deep formation, with intricate patterns that might be rank insignia from copper to personal decoration. With intricate patterns that might be rank insignia reflected the light in faceted patterns that made it impossible to tell exactly where they were reflected the light in faceted patterns that made it impossible to tell exactly where they were looking. Said the tallest Drelvan, its mandibles moving in perfect synchronization with the translation coming through Maya's earpiece. Its mandibles moving in perfect synchronization with the translation. You will address me as commander. These are Lieutenant Commander Vexmore. You will address me as Commander and Chief Security Officer. These are Lieutenant Vexmore. Maya smiled Science broadly. Officer Krelox, extending Chief Security Officer instructed during her briefing. Maya smiled broadly. Dr. Maya Rodriguez, she'd been instructed during her briefing. It's an honor to be the first human to visit your facility. Earth Diplomatic Corps. All four Drelvans to be the first human to visit your facility. Backward. Their exoskeletons made simultaneously took a step backward, and Maya noticed a faint spicy scent suddenly permeating the air. Sounds. And Maya noticed a faint, spicy scent suddenly permeating the air. Slowly. Is something wrong? Science Officer Krelox stepped forward, her hand slowly. Cranial bioluminescence. Science Officer Krelox stepped forward. You are displaying your teeth and extending a bioluminescence. In many species, this would be considered a threat display. And extending a limb. Maya's smile faltered this would be considered a threat display. Oh, I apologize for the confusion. Maya's smile faltered slightly. A smile, this facial expression, I apologize for the show friendliness. A smile, this facial expression is how humans show friendliness. Handshake and extending a hand is our customary greeting. It's called a handshake. Oddly mechanical through the translation system. Repeated Krelox. A ritualistic touching sounding oddly mechanical through the translation system. Fascinating. A ritualistic touching of appendages between individuals. Commander Zithnar's highly unsanitary but fascinating. We do not engage in physical contact with specimens slightly. With guests. We do not engage in physical contact. You will be shown to your quarters where you may rest before the formal commencement of our cultural exchange. You will be shown to your quarters where you may rest before the formal commencement of our cultural exchange. Now. Of course, I understand completely. Different species, different customs. That's why I'm here. Of course, I understand completely. As the security officers escorted her from the room to learn, Maya couldn't help but notice how they maintained a precise distance from the room, as if she were radioactive. But notice how they maintained a precise distance from her. Little did she know just how accurate that assessment was in their eyes. Or dangerous. Once the human was safely contained in that assessment was in their eyes. The Drelvan senior staff was safely contained in its designated quarters. The Drelvan senior staff reconvened in the secure briefing fields designed to prevent any form of surveillance or data leakage. With dampening fields designed to prevent any form of surveillance or data leakage. Commander Zitnar asked. His exoskeleton now relaxed into a less formal configuration. Asked, as they were his exoskeleton now relaxed into a less formal configuration. As they were among only trusted colleagues. Showing a three-dimensional rendering activated the central holographic slowly in the air between them. Showing a three-dimensional rendering of the human appears to match our existing data on human physiology. Though the specimen appears to match our existing data on human physiology, the frequency with which it displays its teeth, I find several aspects puzzling. As it calls the behavior, the frequency with which it displays its teeth. Our historical records indicate that in most carbon-based species, tooth display is aggressive records indicate that in most carbon-based species, constantly threatening us is aggressive. Suggested Drexethal. His defensive is constantly threatening us. Suggested Drexethal. Countered Vexmore. Plates slightly elevated. Our understanding of human behavior is simply incomplete. Countered Vexmore. The specimen appears understanding of human behavior is simply incomplete. Commander Zithnar clicked his mandibles non-aggressive otherwise. What of the psychological assessment? Clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. Krelox's cranium pulsed. What of the psychological assessment? Preliminary scans show high levels of neurotransmitters associated with stress and anxiety. Preliminary scans show high levels of neurotransmitters associated with stress and anxiety. It suggests a capacity for deception. This presenting one emotional state while experiencing another. Capacity for deception. Presenting one emotional state while experiencing another. The word carrying ominous harmonic overtones in Drelvan language. Repeated. The word carrying ominous harmonic overtones in Drelvan language. Predators. With forward-facing eyes and omnivorous dentition. Humans evolved as predators. Deception would be a natural forward-facing eyes and omnivorous dentition. Let us not jump to conclusions. Would be a natural hunting, releasing calming pheromones. Let us not jump to conclusions. The 3-cycle observation calming pheromones. We will follow the Unified Council has authorized tomorrow 3-cycle basic intelligence assessments. We will follow disguised as cultural exchange activities. Tomorrow we begin with basic intelligence assessments. Vexmore's antennae disguised as cultural exchange activities. Concern. Vexmore's antennae twitched in a pattern indicating, should we not attempt to learn the significance of this smiling behavior? Should we not attempt to learn the significance of nonverbal smiling behavior? An excellent suggestion, primary form of nonverbal communication. Science officer. An excellent suggestion, Lieutenant. Comprehensive analysis of this behavior. Science officer. I want to know if it poses any threat to our mission analysis of this behavior. I want to know if the meeting poses any threat to our mission. None of the Drelvans noticed the tiny maintenance drone as the meeting stationary in the corner. None of the Drelvans noticed the tiny maintenance drone. Its optical sensors stationary in the corner throughout glided into a ventilation shaft. Its optical sensors dimmed. Every word of their conversation to Maya Rodriguez's shaft. Carrying Maya every word of their conversation to Maya Rodriguez's quarters, examining the small drone that had unexpectedly dropped from a vent into her room, examining the small drone that had unexpectedly revealing the complex circuitry she had modified using the multi-tool hidden in, revealing the complex circuitry she had modified using the multi-tool to detect in their otherwise thorough screening. The one object the Drelvans had failed to detect in their otherwise thorough screening, listening to the recording for the third time. So I'm a specimen now, am I? And here I thought we were having such a lovely cultural exchange. And here I thought we were having such a lovely cultural exchange. Earth's intelligence services had suspected the Drelvan invitation wasn't entirely above board. Intelligence services had suspected the Drelvan invitation wasn't entirely above board. Xenolinguistic specialist with advanced training in cybersecurity not just a diplomat, but a xenolinguistic specialist with advanced training in cybersecurity and espionage. What did surprise her was how fixated they seemed on her smile. Wrist device disguised as a decorative bracelet. She whispered to her modified Access Earth xenological database disguised as a decorative bracelet. Drelvan facial expressions xenological database. The device vibrated softly against her skin facial expressions and scrolled across its miniature screen. The device vibrated softly against her skin primarily through mandible positioning screen. Antenna movement. Drelvans communicate primarily through mandible positioning. They possess no facial musculature analogous to human release. Expressions. They possess no facial musculature analogous to human information. Expressions shared only through deliberately released chemical signals with selected individuals. Shared only through deliberately released chemical signals with selected individuals. So my constant smiling must seem like I'm broadcasting my emotional state to everyone my constant smiling no wonder they find it disturbing my emotional. She closed the drone, carefully returning it to its original configuration. And placed it near the drone, carefully returning it to its original configuration. It would be retrieved for routine maintenance near the vent, and no one would suspect it had been tampered. It would be retrieved for routine maintenance. Maya stretched out on the bed, staring at the geometrically perfect ceiling. Maya stretched out on the bed, staring at the geometrically perfect ceiling. Well, two can play at this research game because I smile. She practiced in the mirror attached to the small washing station. A completely neutral expression in the mirror attached to the small washing station. Closed eyes unblinking. A completely neutral expression. It felt unnatural. Face even creepy from a human perspective. Eyes unblinking. But perhaps it felt unnatural. Drelvan hosts even creepy from a human perspective. Then, just for fun, it would put her Drelvan the widest, toothiest grin she could manage. Then, just for fun, let's see how they react to the widest, toothiest grin she could manage. Herself. Unaware of just how they react to this one particular facial expression to herself in interspecies unaware of just how significant the next morning Maya was escorted to what the Drelvans called an interaction chamber. The next morning, a large circular room what the Drelvans called an interaction chamber. A large science officer with various objects arranged around its along perimeter. With two assistant researchers. Science officers' names Maya couldn't pronounce properly along with two assistant researchers. Good morning. Whose names Maya couldn't pronounce properly, keeping her face carefully components. Lips closed, eyes steady. Keeping her face change in her demeanor was immediately noticed. Eyes steady. Krelox's cranial bioluminescence flickered rapidly, and the assistant's antennae cranial bioluminescence flickered rapidly as surprise. And the assistant's antennae twitched in what your facial configuration interpreted as surprise. Krelox observed. You have altered your facial configuration. Maya maintained her neutral expression. Why? I realized my smiling maintained her neutral expression. I'm attempting to adapt to your cultural norms might be misinterpreted. A series attempting to adapt to your cultural chirps passed between the Drelvans before Krelox responded. Of clicks and soft chirps passed between the Drelvans before Krelox responded. Our first cultural exchange session. Consider it. Please approach the table. We will now begin our first cultural exchange session. Turned out to be a thinly disguised intelligence test. The cultural exchange Maya recognized turned out to be a thinly disguised intelligence spatial reasoning, Maya recognized memory exercises among the supposedly Drelvan cultural artifacts. Puzzles and memory exercises performed well, but not exceptionally. Cultural occasionally making calculated errors to appear intelligent, not exceptionally, but not threatening. Occasionally making calculated errors to appear intelligent, her neutral expression, but not threatening. Only to notice the Drelvans becoming increasingly agitated. Expression. Their antenna movements grew more pronounced, increasingly agitated. The clicking of their mandibles more frequent. Their antenna movements grew more pronounced. After completing a particularly clicking of their mandibles more frequent, Maya finally asked. After completing a particularly simple logic puzzle, Maya finally asked. Krelox's cranium pulsed with rapid flashes. You seem uncomfortable. Your face remains immobile. Krelox's cranium pulsed with rapid flashes. Human faces are constantly Your face remains immobile. In our preliminary research, human faces are constantly in motion. Maya blinked in surprise. Your current behavior is unsettling. I thought my smiling was making you uncomfortable. Maya blinked in surprise. It was disconcerting, yes. I thought my smiling was making you uncomfortable. But this complete lack of expression is more disturbing. Admitted It suggests you are concealing your thoughts and emotions. But this complete lack of expression is more disturbing. It suggests you are concealing your thoughts and emotions. A short burst of genuine amusement that caused all three Drelvans to take a synchronized step burst of genuine amusement that caused all three Drelvans to take a synchronized step back, allowing her face to relax into a natural, gentle smile. She said, I'm trying to be face to relax into a natural, gentle, but it seems I can't win either way. I'm trying to be assistant's exchanged more clicks, but it seems I can't win either way. Officer responded. Krelox's assistant's exchanged more clicks if you behaved according to your natural inclinations. Perhaps it would be to understand human behavior according to your natural inclinations. Of course, our purpose is to understand human behavior. Diplomatic training immediately recognizing the slip. Maya agreed. The Drelvans had just inadvertently confirmed they were studying her rather than engaging in a cultural exchange. For the remainder of the session, her rather than engaging in a cultural exchange naturally when appropriate. For the remainder of the session, she noticed the Drelvans observing her to smile naturally when appropriate. Their compound eyes reflecting her expressions observing her face in tiny facets. Their compound eyes reflecting her expressions in hundreds of tiny smiles changed subtly based on context. Particularly polite, fascinated when her smile changed subtly based on context. What Maya didn't realize was that with each smile, each change in her facial muscles. What Maya didn't realize was that were developing an increasingly complex theory about human communication. The Drelvans were developing an increasingly complex theory about human communication. That evening, one that would Commander catastrophically reviewed the day's findings with growing concern. That evening, the observation chamber was filled with holographic displays showing recordings of the human's facial expressions. The observation chamber was filled with holographic displays showing recordings of the human's facial expressions throughout the testing session. His mandibles tight with tension. Play sequence 47 again. The display showed his mandibles tight with tension. Three-dimensional puzzle. The display showed in concentration. Maya solving a as the final piece clicked into place, her face transformed. Her brow furrowed in concentration. Eyes widening slightly. As the final piece clicked into place, her face transformed. Eyes widening slightly, lips curving upward urgently, teeth briefly visible. That facial configuration. There. Compare it with sequence 29. That facial configuration. The display split. Compare it with showing Maya from earlier in the session. Receiving a cup of water from one of the assistants. Showing Maya from earlier in the session. The same expression appeared. Receiving a cup of water from one of the assistants. But subtle differences were apparent in the angle of her eyebrows and the tension. But subtle differences were apparent in the angle of her eyebrows but contained distinct variations around her eyes. My analysis suggests the human employs at least 27 variations of this smile expression. My analysis suggests the human employs at least 27 variations of this smile Lieutenant Vexmore's antennae, each conveying different information. Nervously. Lieutenant Vexmore's antennae twitched possibly. Krelox responded to a form of cranial lights pulsing. More concerning, Krelox correlation I've discovered. Cranial lights pulsing. The science officer manipulated the correlation I've discovered. Overlaying a graph of Maya's neurochemical readings with timestamps of her smile occurrences. Overlaying a graph of Maya's neurochemical readings with timestamps of her smile occurrences. There is a corresponding spike in each time the human displays teeth. There is a corresponding spike in adrenaline and dopamine production. Combat hormones. Drexithal's exoskeleton preparing shifted ominously. Not necessarily. Combat hormones, countered Krelox. The specimen is preparing for aggression. These hormones serve multiple functions in humans, countered Krelox. However, combined with the frequency of this expression and its variations in humans, I believe we are observing a sophisticated expression and its variations. Manipulation. I believe we are observing a sophisticated compound eyes focused intently on the frozen image of Maya's smile. Sithnar's compound eyes focused intently on the frozen image of Maya's smile. Human may be using these facial configurations to alter its own brain chemistry. Human may be using these facial configurations to alter its own brain chemistry performance. Krelocks theorized. More concerning is the possibility that these expressions are evolved to influence the neural states of others. The possibility that these expressions are evolved to influence the neural states of others. Essentially, silence fell. A form of primitive psychic influence, broken only by the soft clicking of anxious mandibles over the chamber. Are you suggesting the soft clicking of finally mandibles that this smiling could affect our neurological function? Finally asked that our physiology is substantially different. Neurological functions. Krelocks admitted. Our physiology is substantially different. Many species evolve mechanisms to influence the behavior of others. Many species evolve mechanisms to influence the behavior of others, or the subsonic hypnotic patterns of Jovian whale analogs. Or the Commander Zethnar's decision was immediate. Of Jovian whale analogs. Increased containment protocols. Commander Zethnar's decision was immediate. With General Station personnel. Increased containment protocols must occur. The human is not to interact with general shielded barriers until we understand this mechanism must occur through screens or from behind shielded barriers until we understand this mechanism fully. Indicating respectful disagreement. Vexmore might we be overreacting? Her pheromones indicating respectful disagreement. No aggressive intent. Might we be overreacting? That we can detect corrective Drexthal. Shown no aggressive intent. If these facial manipulations are indeed a form of influence or communication, we cannot decode. If these facial manipulations are indeed a form of influence or communication, we cannot decode. Zethnar's antennae flattened against his head in the Drelvan gesture of finality. Zethnar's antennae flattened against his head in the Drelvan gesture of level 7 containment for good reason. The Unified Council, we will proceed with caution. Humans as level 7 we test the influence capacity of this we will proceed with caution. Tomorrow none of them noticed that in the frozen holographic image still hovering before them. None of them noticed that held a frozen holographic image as if she understood far more than she was letting on. Maya's eyes held a knowing glint. Maya knew something had changed far more than her escorts arrived. The following morning, Maya knew something had changed. Instead of the moment her escorts arrived, she'd grown accustomed to. The following morning, 4 heavily armored Drelvans entered her quarters. She'd grown their exoskeletons enhanced 4 heavily armored Drelvans defensive technology. Their exoskeletons enhanced with what appeared to be defensive technology. Smiling out of habit. All 4 Drelvans visibly tensed, their mandibles clicking out of habit. Interesting. All 4 Drelvans visibly tensed, their mandibles clicking rapidly. Interesting. What happened overnight? They're afraid of my smile not to the interaction chamber. What happened overnight? To a much larger room she hadn't seen before. She was led not to the interaction chamber. A transparent barrier divided the space in half. She hadn't seen before. With Drelvans on one side, a transparent barrier divided the space on her side. With Drelvans on one side, stood behind the barrier positioned on her side. By the now familiar science team and several new Drelvans wearing different insignia. Flanked by the now familiar science team and several new Drelvans wearing the communication system. Please be seated. Maya complied. The commander instructed through the communication system. A neutral expression. Maya complied. May I ask the purpose of this new arrangement? A neutral expression. A precautionary measure. May I ask the purpose of this new arrangement? Mandibles tight. A precautionary cultural exchange will focus on human facial expressions. Tight. We find them. Today's cultural exchange will focus on human facial expressions. Maya nodded slowly. We find them. Her mind racing. Informative. Her modified wrist device had intercepted fragments of internal communications. Her modified wrist device had intercepted fragments of developing bizarre theories about human smiling. Enough to know they somehow believed it had developing bizarre theories about human smiling. Possibly even psychic capabilities. They somehow believed it had absurd properties. Possibly even psychic capabilities. It was absurd, I'd be happy to explain but also potentially useful, she said, allowing a small smile. I'd be happy to explain human expressions. Why the barrier is necessary, she said, allowing a small smile. Krelocks stepped forward. Though I'm curious why the barrier is necessary and explain its function. Krelocks stepped forward. Maya obliged. Please demonstrate what you call a smile and explain its function. This is a basic smile. Maya obliged with a standard friendly smile. To indicate friendliness. This is a basic smile. Or social comfort. Humans use it to indicate friendliness, positive, happiness, interaction, or social comfort. The Drelvans behind the barrier conferred briefly. Interaction. Antennae twitching in complex patterns. The Drelvans behind the barrier conferred briefly. Now please demonstrate what you would classify as your most intense or powerful smile. Now please demonstrate what you would classify as your most intense or powerful smile. What they were requested. They wanted to see if a stronger smile had a greater effect on them. What they were testing. Fighting to keep her amusement hidden. A stronger smile had a greater effect on them. Then broke into the widest, most dazzling smile she could manage. She composed herself. The kind used in toothpaste commercials, most dazzling smile she could manage. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. In toothpaste commercials back on Earth. Several Drelvans. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. One junior officer's antennae went completely physically recoiled. Commander Zethnar's secondary arms moved to a defensive posture. Commander Zethnar's secondary arms moved to a defensive posture. More intrigued. Fascinating. murmured Krelox.
And the purpose of this intensive configuration, more intrigued than alarmed. Maya maintained her bright smile. And the purpose of this intensive configuration expresses great pleasure or enthusiasm. Her bright smile. Humans use it in moments. This expresses great pleasure or enthusiasm when trying to make others feel welcome and appreciated. Of particular happiness, usually when trying to make others feel welcome and appreciated. Krelox pressed. And does it usually produce the desired effect? Maya answered truthfully. Krelox pressed. A genuine smile is very difficult to resist. Maya answered truthfully. This statement triggered another flurry of very difficult to resist behind the barrier. Maya could practically see their misunderstanding growing behind the barrier. But she decided to let it continue. Maya could practically see their misunderstanding growing. Smile as something mysterious and powerful. The more they fixated on the actual intelligence gathering and powerful, the less they focused on the actual intelligence gathering. With the Drelvans documenting every variation of smile Maya could produce. From the Drelvans documenting every variation of smile Maya could produce. Smile of someone shy and uncertain to mischievous. To the throughout it all, she provided honest but deliberately ambiguous explanations. Throughout it all, she provided honest but deliberately ambiguous explanations. When they finally escorted her back to her quarters, Maya allowed herself a genuine smile. When they finally escorted her back to her quarters, the Drelvans had unwittingly revealed far more about themselves than they'd learned about her. The Drelvans had unwittingly revealed far more about themselves than they'd learned about collective anxiety. Their hierarchical decision-making process, their tendency toward collective anxiety, intelligence, their hierarchical decision-making process, and most valuably, all valuable intelligence handed her a psychological weapon she never expected. And most valuably, they handed her a psychological weapon she never expected. The following days saw a dramatic escalation in security protocols. The following days was now accompanied by dramatic escalation in security protocols, and all personnel was now accompanied by 6 guards whenever she left her quarters. And all personnel she encountered wore what appeared to be influence of her facial expressions. For her part, to shield them from the supposed influence of her facial modulating her smiles to appear mysterious. Maya played along, carefully modulating her smiles to appear mysterious with a mixture of fear and fascination. She noticed how the Drelvans watched her face with a mixture of fear and fascination. Her eyes documenting during one particularly long session around as Krelox conducted yet another series of tests on the neurological impact of her expressions. As Krelox conducted yet another series of tests on the neurological impact of her expressions, Maya decided to probe for more information. Enigmatic smile. I'm curious why the Drelvan Confederation has such interest in human facial expressions. Why the Drelvan Confederation has such interest in human facial expressions. Surely there are more important aspects of human culture flickers of light. Understanding communication methods is fundamental to cultural exchange. Understanding communication methods is fundamental to cultural exchange. Though I can't help noticing the extensive security precautions. Pleasantly. It almost seems as if you find human expressions security precautions threatening. It almost seems as if you find human expressions even through the barrier. Maya could detect the subtle shift in pheromones. Even through the barrier, Maya could detect the subtle shift in pheromones. Commander Zithnar stepped forward. The Drelvan equivalent of tension filling the air. We find human expressions unusual. Commander Zithnar stepped forward. Our species evolved to communicate meaning through human expressions and antenna positions. Our species evolved to communicate facial features is unprecedented in our experience. The extreme mobility of human facial features is unprecedented in our experience. Different evolutionary paths lead to different communication styles. On Earth, we have many species that communicate in ways humans can barely perceive. On Earth, we have many species that communicate in ways humans can barely perceive. Through ultraviolet markings, facial expressions, or infrasound, Krelox noted. Yet you developed these facial expressions. Efficiency, Krelox noted. Maya suggested. Why? Visual communication works at a distance and doesn't require special sensory organs to detect. Visual communication allowed our ancestors to coordinate in hunting and gathering without alerting prey or predators. It allowed our ancestors to coordinate in hunting and gathering without alerting prey or predators with sound. Maya could practically see them interpreting alarm the Drelvan's biased filter. Maya could practically see them interpreting her with facial expressions developed as hunting tools. Humans as evolved predators with facial expressions developed as hunting tools. After a pause. Now, fascinating if you would please demonstrate expression category 7 again. Now, what you termed if you would please demonstrate expression category 7 again. Maya complied. What you termed the reassuring smile. The Drelvan's misunderstanding of human smiling had progressed beyond amusing into potentially dangerous territory. Of human smiling had progressed beyond amusing into potentially dangerous territory. What might they do if they truly believed her expressions held some power over them? That evening, as she reviewed the data her modified wrist device had gathered, That evening,
Maya's concerns
as she reviewed
deepened.
the data her modified
Fragments
wrist
of
device had
intercepted
gathered,
communications.
Maya's concerns suggested the Drelvan High Command was
Fragments
growing
of
increasingly
intercepted
alarmed by the
communications
human facial influence
suggested the
capacity.
Drelvan High Command was growing
There were
increasingly
references to
alarmed by the
containment
human
protocols
facial
and even
influence
discussions
capacity.
of neutralization
There were
options
references
if
to
she were deemed
containment
too
protocols
dangerous, and even discussions of
This is getting out of
neutralization
hand.
options if she
She
were deemed
murmured
too
to herself.
dangerous. I need
This
to
is
find a
getting
way
out
to
of hand.
access their central
She murmured to
communication system
herself.
and contact Earth. I need to find a way
As
to
if in
access
answer to
their
her
central
thoughts, a soft
communication
thud
system
came
and
from the
contact
ventilation
Earth.
system.
As if
A
in
small
answer to her
maintenance drone
thoughts,
she
a
had
soft
modified
thud
days
came from
earlier
the
dropped into
ventilation
her
system.
room,
The
bringing
small
with it an
maintenance drone
unexpected
she had modified
opportunity.
days earlier dropped into her
Commander
room.
Zithnar
Bringing
stood
with it
before
an
the
unexpected
emergency
opportunity.
session of the station's senior staff.
Commander
His
Zithnar stood
exoskeleton
before the
polished
emergency
to a formal
session
shine
of the
that
station's
reflected his
senior
gravity
staff.
of purpose.
His exoskeleton
The
polished
evidence
to a
is now
formal shine
conclusive,
that reflected
he
his
announced,
gravity of purpose.
activating the central
The
holographic
evidence
display.
is now conclusive.
After
He
7
announced,
days of
activating
intensive
the central holographic
study.
display.
Science Officer Krelox
After
has
7 days
completed
of
the
analysis
analysis
of the human
study.
facial manipulation
Science Officer
phenomenon.
Krelox
The
has
hologram
completed the
displayed a analysis
complex
of the
neural
human
map of
facial
Maya's
manipulation
brain,
phenomenon.
with highlighted
The
pathways
hologram
and chemical
displayed a
signatures.
complex neural map of Maya's
As
brain.
you can see,
with highlighted
Krelox
pathways
explained,
and chemical
cranial
signatures.
lights pulsing steadily.
As you can see,
When the
Krelox
human performs
explained,
these smile
cranial lights
expressions,
pulsing steadily.
specific
Neural
when the
pathways
human
activate
performs
in
these
sequence.
smile expressions,
These pathways generate a
specific
precisely
neural
calibrated
pathways activate in
electromagnetic
sequence.
field that
These
extends
pathways
approximately
generate a
2 meters
precisely
from the human's
calibrated
face.
electromagnetic
Lieutenant
field
Vexmore's
that
antennae
extends
twitched
approximately 2
skeptically.
meters from the human's face.
And you believe this
Lieutenant
field influences
Vexmore's
other
antennae
nervous
twitched
systems?
skeptically.
The evidence
And you believe
supports
this
this
field
conclusion.
influences other nervous
Krelox
systems?
continued.
When
The evidence
exposed to the
supports
human's
this
most
conclusion.
intense smile
Krelox
configurations,
continued.
when exposed to the human's most
show
measurable
measurable
changes in brain
configurations.
activity,
Nothing dramatic.
security personnel
Subtle
show
shifts
measurable
in
changes
perception
in brain
decision-making
activity processes.
Nothing dramatic.
This explains
Subtle
the
shifts in
discomfort we
perception
feel when
and
observing these
decision-making
expressions.
processes.
Our
This
brains are
explains the
detecting
discomfort we feel when
attempted
observing
influence.
these expressions.
Drexthal's mandibles
Our
click
brains are
sharply.
detecting the
This confirms the
influence.
Unified Council's
Drexthal's
assessment.
mandibles click
Humans
sharply.
are indeed level 7
This confirms the
containment risks.
Unified Council's
They
assessment.
evolved as apex
Humans
predators
are
with
indeed
natural
level 7
mind-affecting
containment
capabilities.
risks.
They evolved as
But the
apex
effect
predators
appears
with
minimal,
natural mind-affecting
Vexmore
capabilities, and possibly
But the
unintentional on the
effect
human's
appears
part.
minimal.
Minimal
Vexmore
in our
argued.
species, and possibly
Corrected
unintentional on the
Krelox.
human's part. Our silicon-based
Minimal
neural
in our
structures
species,
provide natural
corrected
resistance.
Krelox.
But the
Our
effect on
silicon-based
carbon-based
neural
life forms
structures
similar to
provide natural
humans
resistance
could be
But
substantially
the
greater.
effect on carbon-based
More
life forms
concerning is
similar
the
to
evidence
humans
that these
could be
capabilities are
substantially
precisely
greater.
controlled. More concerning is
The
the
human has
evidence that these
demonstrated at least
capabilities are
43
precisely
distinct
controlled.
smile configurations.
The human has
Each
demonstrated
presumably
at
with
least different
43
influence
distinct
effects.
smile configurations.
Commander Zithnar's
Each
decision was
presumably with
immediate
different
and firm.
influence effects.
We must assume
Commander
the worst.
Zithnar's
If
decision was
humans
immediate
possess
and
even
firm.
limited
Psychic
we must assume
influence
the worst.
capabilities.
If humans
They
possess
represent a
even
significant
limited
threat to galactic
psychic
stability.
influence capabilities.
Imagine a species that
They
could
represent
subtly
a
manipulate
significant
the
threat to
perceptions and
galactic
decisions
stability.
of council
Imagine a
representatives
species
through mere
that could
facial
subtly
adjustments.
manipulate the perceptions and decisions
What do
of
you
council
propose, Commander?
representatives through mere
Asked
facial
Vexmore.
adjustments. Her pheromones indicating
What do
deep
you propose,
concern.
Commander?
We
Asked
must
Vexmore.
expand. Her
Our
pheromones
research.
indicating deep concern.
The human specimen must
we
be
must
subjected
expand
to more invasive
our
neural
research
mapping to understand the full
The human
extent of this
specimen must be
capability.
subjected to more
The
invasive
Unified
neural
Council
mapping
must be
to
informed
understand the full
immediately
extent
of
of
our
this
findings.
capability. The
Drexthal's
Unified Council must be
exoskeleton
informed
shifted to its
immediately of
most
our findings.
formal configuration.
Drexthal's
And if the
exoskeleton
capability
shifted
proves
to
as
its
dangerous
most
as we
formal
suspect.
configuration.
Commander Zithnar's
And if the
compound eyes
capability proves
reflected
as
the
dangerous as
holographic
we
image of
suspect.
Maya's smiling
Commander
face.
Zithnar's
Now
compound eyes
annotated with
reflected
what
the
the Drelvans
holographic
believed
image of
were
Maya's
influence
smiling
vectors
face, and neural
now
effect
annotated
patterns.
with what the Drelvans believed were
Then the human
influence
species
vectors
will likely
and
be
neural
designated
effect
for
patterns.
isolation protocols.
Then the human species
He
will
stated
likely be
grimly.
designated for
No contact with other
isolation
species.
protocols.
No
He
expansion
stated
beyond their
grimly.
home system.
No
Possible
contact with other
containment
species.
measures around their
No
entire
expansion
solar system.
beyond their home system.
Based
Possible
on facial
containment
expressions.
measures around their entire
Vexmore's
solar system.
antennae flattened in the Drelvan
Based on
gesture of
facial
disbelief.
expressions.
Based on
Vexmore's
undetectable
antennae
psychic
flattened in the
influence
Drelvan gesture of
capabilities.
disbelief.
Corrected Zithnar.
Based on
The
undetectable
safety of the
psychic
galactic
influence
community must take
capabilities.
precedence. Corrected Zithnar.
Prepare.
The safety of the
specimen for
galactic
deep neural
community
scanning.
must take precedence.
The procedure will
Prepare
commence tomorrow at
The
first
specimen
cycle.
for deep neural scanning.
Deep in the maintenance shafts
procedure
of
will
orbital commence tomorrow at first cycle. Maya crawled through spaces never designed for orbital platform size. The reprogrammed crawled through spaces never designed for a being of her size. Blue light illuminating the narrow passage. Drone floated ahead of her. Stolen Drelvan data pad displayed a schematic of the station. with a pulsing indicator showing her position relative to her schematic of the station, the central communications hub, showing her position relative to her target. I should have been a contortionist instead of a diplomat, she muttered, squeezing through a particularly tight junction instead of a diplomat, she muttered. Her environmental suit was torn in several places from sharp edges in the maintenance shaft. Her environmental suit was torn in several places from sharp edges in the maintenance shaft. She had intercepted enough communications to know that the Drelvans planned to subject her to invasive neural scanning. Communications to know that the Drelvans wanted to dissect her brain to understand why humans smile. Essentially, they wanted to dissect her brain to understand why humans grill overlooking a large, dimly lit chamber softly filled with communication equipment grill overlooking a large, dimly lit chamber filled with communication equipment. Technicians monitoring the arrays. Maya peered through the slats. Too many, counting 4 Drelvan technicians monitoring the arrays. She checked her wrist device. She whispered to herself. The program she had uploaded to the station's environmental systems was ready. With a tap, she uploaded to the station's environmental systems was ready. Gravity plating in non-essential areas began fluctuating randomly. Throughout the station, lights flickered in non-essential areas began fluctuating randomly. Minor system alerts sounded in distant sections. Peripheral corridors. The effect was immediate. Minor system alerts sounded in distant hurried from the communications hub. The effect was immediate. Responding to the cascading 3 of the technicians hurried from the communications hub. Only 1 remained. Responding to the cascading system maintaining critical. Only 1 remained. Maya carefully removed the ventilation maintaining critical. Set it aside and dropped silently into the shadows behind a large server bank. Set it aside and dropped silently into the shadows behind a large server fixed on the control panel. The remaining technicians moving swiftly but quietly. Its attention fixed on the control panel. Withdrew a small aerosol canister from her boot. Maya and sprayed its contents near the Drelvan's a small aerosol canister from her boot. The fast-acting sedative sprayed its contents formulated specifically for Drelvan physiology. The fast-acting sedative gathered formulated specifically for Drelvan physiology based on data she had gathered. Mandibles going instantly. Sorry about that. The technician slumped forward. Maya murmured, mandibles going slack. The unconscious Drelvan to a more comfortable position. Maya murmured, gently moving. You'll wake up with nothing worse than a headache. To a more comfortable position. She turned to the communication console. Nothing worse than a fingers flying over the unfamiliar controls. She turned to the communication console. Her linguistic training helped her navigate the Drelvan controls. Quickly bypassing security protocols and establishing a subspace channel. To the encrypted Earth emergency protocols and establishing a subspace channel. This is Operative Rodriguez on Drelvan orbital platform Kashesh. She transmitted. This is Operative Rodriguez on Drelvan orbital authentication code. Tango Echo November 9 keeping her voice low. Situation has deteriorated. Tango Echo November immediate extraction. Situation Drelvan Confederation has misinterpreted immediate facial expressions as psychic influence. Drelvan Confederation has misinterpreted invasive facial expressions as psychic influence. High probability of designating Earth for isolation protocol research. Have gathered probability of designating Earth for isolation protocols and security systems. Have gathered significant data packets on Drelvan technology. She connected her wrist device to the console, transmitting data packet everything she had collected over the past week. She connected her wrist device to the console, uploading everything she had collected over the defensive capabilities, schematics, most importantly, communication protocols, psychological capabilities, profile, and most importantly, their tendency toward collective anxiety and rigid thinking patterns could be valuable leverage in future collective anxiety and rigid thinking patterns could be valuable leverage in future negotiations. Was drawn to an incoming message on the Drelvan emergency channel. Maya's attention was drawn to an incoming message on the Drelvan emergency channel. A station-wide alert for her capture. Her eyes widened as she translated the text. They had discovered her missing from her quarters. A station-wide alert for her transmission complete. They had discovered her missing from her quarters. My position is compromised. Transmission complete. Will attempt to reach emergency. Escape pods in section 19. Rodriguez out to reach emergency. She disconnected her device and was about to retreat to the ventilation shaft when the doors to the communication device and was about to retreat to the ventilation shaft when the doors to the communications hub slid open. 4 heavily armed security officers trained directly at the entrance. Flanked by 4 heavily armed guards, their weapons trained directly at her, mandibles tight with tension. An impressive escape but ultimately futile. Drexthal clicked. Maya straightened. Mandibles tight with tension. Mind racing through options. But ultimately futile. Combat was out of the question. Maya straightened. Even if she could overcome 5 Drelvans, which was doubtful, was out of the question. It would only confirm their worst fears about 5 Drelvans, which was doubtful. Instead, she would only confirm their worst fears about humans. She smiled. Instead, she did the last thing they expected. Most dazzling smile she could manage. The brightest, the effect was electric. Most, all 5 Drelvans visibly recoiled, their antennae going rigid with alarm. All 5 Drelvans visibly recoiled, their antennae going rigid with alarm. The guard's weapons wavered slightly, maintaining her smile while slowly raising her hands to show she was unarmed. Maintaining her smile while
escaping.
slowly raising
I
her
was
hands
attempting
to
to
show she was
contact my
unarmed.
superiors to clarify
I
the
wasn't
nature of our
escaping.
cultural exchange.
I was attempting to contact my superiors
Drex
to clarify
thalls.
the nature of our
Compound
cultural
eyes narrowed.
exchange. Facets gleaming in the dim
Drex
light.
thalls.
You
Compound eyes
bypassed
narrowed.
station security,
Facets
rendered a
gleaming in the
technician
dim light.
unconscious, and accessed restricted
You
communication
bypassed
systems.
station
Security rendered a technician
All regrettable
unconscious and
necessities.
accessed restricted
Maya
communication
admitted,
systems.
still smiling.
All regrettable
consider
necessities.
The situation
Maya
from
admitted,
my perspective.
still smiling. I came
But
here in good
consider
faith for a cultural
the
exchange,
situation from my perspective.
only to discover I'm being
I
treated
came
as a
here in
research
good faith
specimen
for a cultural
because
exchange.
you believe my smile
Only to
has
discover
psychic
I'm being
properties.
treated as a research specimen.
A ripple
because
of
you believe
clicks
my
and
smile
subtle
has
antenna
psychic
movements
properties.
pass through the guards. A
The
ripple of
Drelvan
clicks and
equivalent of
subtle
uncertain
antenna
murmurs
movements pass through the guards.
Your neural influence
The
attempts
Drelvan
will not
equivalent
work
of
on us.
uncertain murmurs. Your neural influence attempts will not work on us.